I break down old jewellery that's usually broken or discarded, and I use the broken parts and all of the discarded parts, and I make other things with them. The thing I'm going to do today is some chimes, some wind chimes. Now, pretty much everything that I'm using has been recycled in some form. So I break down jewellery into some little pots, and if I have a necklace come in, I'll break it down into beads, into any little silver or gold or any colour that are have a little hook on it, or some things that may be little flat beads that are spacer beads. Nothing is wasted. I even use the links on broken chains. These are all broken chains that have just been thrown away. So I break down all the links, and I also use old chain. So if something comes in that the chain's broken, the findings are broken, I keep the chain. I have a box of chain, different sort of sizes of chains. Everything from these very tiny ones up to those rather thick, heavy ones. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to look through all of my beads, and I'll first probably decide on a colour, because you have to start somewhere. So I'll reduce it to 2 or 3 colours. I'm thinking today maybe some blues, some purples, some sparkly clears, and possibly a base of silver, and then I'll go from there. The next thing I do is I decide what I'm going to use for the main structure. I usually use recycled bangles. So I've chosen 3 with a nice decorative pattern on them. And then what I do is I use a bit of scrap wire, and I just wire them together so that I can get them flat, because as you can see, a slightest pressure on them and they will start to fold into one another. So you just take a few moments and get the bangles nice and flat, and just loosely put the wire around so it holds them in place but doesn't put pressure on them. I usually put about 3 pieces of wire just to keep them in place so that I can see how the surface is going to look as one surface. And then once it's all level and I can see that the surface is going to be broad enough, then I will start to wire wrap the bits that I need. The wire wrapping is something that just needs to be done to attach something so that you can attach the chimes at the end of it. But this is the first stage. That's just getting it level, making sure that's what you have. I'm now going to wire wrap small areas where I will attach a link that will hold the chimes. Because they are quite attractive bangles, I won't be wire wrapping the entire thing, because it's not necessary, because they're quite pretty to look at. So I will quite carefully wrap around the 3 bangles, but not pull it too tight. If you pull it too tight, you will get the bangles pushing inside one another, and you don't want that. You want them to stay flat. So I'm now going to just wire wrap the small area and start attaching the links. Right, I've now completed all the links, and it's ready to put in the cross bangle, which will hold it upright. For the upright bangle, it needs to be a much more heavy duty piece of jewellery. This is because it has to brace all of the others, and it has to take the weight of the actual chimes. So I've chosen one really pretty diamante bangle, which is much thicker and much heavier. To attach it to the others, you just use some cross wire and make sure that it's stable and can't move around. I decided to go with a kind of thin yarn or heavy duty embroidery silk, if you like. It will give it a little bit more colour and it doesn't deaden the sound. These chimes are very small and sound quite light, so you don't want something that's going to deaden the sound of them. So I've cut 5 pieces, all the same length. I've put some of them on already and I'm just down to this last one. Now I've put them on by threading the yarn through the middle and up. Now I've left it sticking out of the end at the moment because that way when they're all on you can measure them and you can alter how long or short they are so you can get them all measured and properly. So I've done all of them but this little one. Now what you will need for this is something with a little hook. This is a little awl with a hook. Now this is quite sharp, so do be careful. Either that or you'll need some very thin wire and you make it into a loop, push it down, push this through and then pull it back. It's so that you can get this inside and up through there. The bigger the chimes, the easier it is. These are just very, very small. That's fine because they are doing the job they needed. So now I'm just going to push this down and look at it through the hole. I can't really show the camera this very well, so that you can see it's just moving back and forth through there. Then you just push your thread, yarn, string through. And this is the tricky bit. You then have to try to get the hook to hook the thread. Which is a lot easier when you're not trying to do it in front of a camera and it's in your way. That's it, I think. There you go, and you pull that one through. Then what you have to remember to do before you do the other side is you have to remember to attach it to this. So you'll put it through one, move it across to another so it causes an inverted triangle, and then pull it through there. And now comes the slightly trickier bit, because getting the second piece through and up is always a little bit trickier. Just make sure you put it through the opposite side of the chime. So again, the hook goes down, the thread goes through, like so. And you try to pull it a little taut and try to make sure you actually get the right thread. You may have to try a few times to do it. Right, is that it? Oh. And then the worst bit happens, you pull just one thread of it. So if that happens, just see if you can straighten it out again. It doesn't really matter once it's through. There it is. That is the second one through. So there you go, you have both of the threads through. Just make sure that you pull them to the same level, and then just make one small knot and pull it down. As I say, you can level it up later once you've got all of them hanging, because as you can see there, they're uneven. So now it's just the job of pulling these through and levelling all that up. I've fixed these little clamp beads at the top where the cord comes through. This is so that I can just balance it out so that it's not constantly slipping, and also so that it's got a small eye. I can attach some beads there just to give it enough weight to just weigh the very light thread down. For the decorative areas, I'm using recycled chain. This is quite fine chain. I've cut 3 pieces of it at round about the same length. It doesn't mean that I'll necessarily hang it at the same length, but I've attached beads and some crystal beads, a few different colours, and I've put some findings at the top to hold it, and I will do 3 the same and then hang them in between the chimes. This will just balance it out and also give the chimes a little more weight. So the findings are just to hold the beads at the top, where I'll be attaching it to the bangles. For the centre of the wind chimes, I decided to use an old bracelet, and I've used it exactly as it came. It had got a broken catch at the top, which didn't matter because you don't need that bit, but I've used these as they are, and you can see the bracelet is still intact, and I've attached it at the bottom to an old pendant. But as a striker, to strike at the chimes, I've used a heavy duty glass bead, and this is because the striker has to be fairly heavy, because it has to be moved by the wind and strike everything else. It stopped going straight to the bottom by the fact that on this bit of the bracelet, those links are quite small, but there's an extender piece on the end, and that means that the bead can't quite slip over them, so it holds it just a few centimetres from the base. And that is pretty much the last part to be done, so it just needs to be hung up and tested. This is the finished wind chime, made entirely from the old jewellery. No real plan to it, just made up with things that can be reused. A glass bead, an acrylic or glass, I think it's acrylic, old pendant, beads of all sorts, old chain, and I just think it's so pretty. It's very difficult at the moment. We're just about to have a storm, so the light's changing literally as I'm filming this. But I think that's come out really pretty for something that is made of things that would have just been thrown away. The only thing left to finish is just at the top here, where you can see a little loop of wire, I just have to put the ring on there to finish off. But I think that's come out quite pretty. And that is all from just trashed old jewellery.